Hi, everybody. Just want to say welcome to all our members, everybody who's joining us today. We look forward to this great talk by David Neal today. He's going to be speaking to us about Leadership Guide for the Reluctant Leader. So without further ado, welcome, David.
Well, hey y'all. I have a slide for that. Hey, I am excited to be here. Well, as excited as one could be in a pandemic. Excited to be with you this evening. You know, we're all so practicing social distancing and all that jazz. So I truly am as excited as one can get because I will take what I can get during this crazy COVID crisis. Well, I have a story to tell you. Two fish are in a tank, and one fish turns to the other and asks, "Do you know how to drive this thing?" Because it's a tank. Well, during these unprecedented times, there's there's been so much disruption and confusion and noise. You might feel like a fish trying to drive a tank. I want to share with you some things that I have learned over my career um, that I think may help you some. Some things that you can take away that could help you right away, or perhaps throughout the rest of your career, or who knows, you know, maybe something I tell you tonight could be a seed that's planted that affects you for the rest of your life. That's the real amazing opportunity we all have, right? Every time we get together with, even in a casual um, instance, we have the opportunity to have an impact on other people. And what if I told you that regardless of the technology that you know, regardless of the job title that you have amazing potential to impact your workplace, your family, your community, and beyond in powerful and meaningful ways? That's what I want to share with you. But first, I have a Tory. I have a story that I want to tell you about myself. A cautionary tale, if you will. Um, I forgot to ask earlier. Uh, Michael, if you could let me know how my audio and video are doing. Is the quality up to where it ought to be? You can. All right. Thank you. So when I started my career, I was doing a mix of IT and programming, and I absolutely loved solving problems and fixing things. I couldn't believe that I got paid to do the things that I got to do. Yes, it was amazing. But then a funny thing happened. I was promoted to a management position. I hated it. All I wanted to do was to write code. And believe it or not, I'm an introvert. Leaving my desk to go and talk to other people was not even remotely in my nature. And yes, I am an introvert. I've taken the test to prove it. 100% off the charts. So I resented the role and responsibilities. I did the bare minimum to get by. And within 18 months, I took a straight programming job making less money. This cycle of promotion to management, despair, changing jobs repeated itself several times in early in my career. My wife would ask me, "What do you have against making more money?" Well, my ideal job consisted of give me the most powerful computer, give me a virtually unlimited supply of caffeinated beverages, and stand back while I sling some code. And does anyone agree with that? Can you follow me? Can I get an amen? Right? Just slide a pizza under the door and let me get my job done. You know what I'm talking about. Well, um, however, I made a lot of mistakes along the way. And so I'm going to share with you some of my most embarrassing mistakes that I made early in my career. Number one, I didn't ask for help because I was afraid of what others might think. Number two, I didn't follow up on a promise that I made. Number three, I avoided conflict and at all costs. I didn't step up and take responsibility when I needed to. I didn't encourage others, and I didn't publicly celebrate the success of other people. These mistakes had nothing to do with being a programmer. The most difficult parts of any job and the most valuable activities of any job have nothing to do with technology at all. It's people, how we value ourselves and how we value others. It wasn't until many years later, through mentoring and training, and not to mention maybe a little bit of maturity, that I began to realize that my attitude towards everything outside of cranking out code needed, well, an attitude adjustment. I've had to come to terms with what it means to be a leader, and I want to give you some things that I've learned along the way that might help you on your journey as well. Now, you may be thinking what I used to think, that leadership is only for management. And for the longest time, I didn't want to have anything to do with being in management. But leadership is not just for management. It's not to say that there aren't some aspects of leadership that are part of being in a management role. If you are in a management role, for example, it's your duty to set the example and to establish the culture for your team, among many other things. But I'm here to tell you that leadership is for all y'all. And, in case you're not familiar with, you know, that phrase from the deep south, there, there's different escalations of the term y'all. There's you, maybe one person, there's y'all, maybe, a handful of people. And then when you mean everybody, you mean all y'all. So there are qualities and skills of being a leader that we all need to learn. So, although this talk is not about management, here's some advice to you who find yourselves in a management role, either currently or in the future. It's okay to ask for resources and training. Find a mentor, and if you don't know anyone who could be a mentor for you, ask your employer. It's okay to admit that, hey, I'm not qualified to do this role. I need some help. And then maybe this isn't what you wanted, but I encourage you to embrace the opportunity to learn and determine to make an impact. Funny thing is, we love to geek out about technology, right? That's part of the passion of being in software in the first place, is getting to really geek out about things. Well, turns out there's things in management that you can geek out about. I know it sounds terrible, but there are skills and technologies and ways to improve and ways to help other people that you can, you know, get really nerdy about. Um, Set some goals and stick to it. Don't worry about your technical chops, just like riding a bicycle. If you find yourself needing to go back into a software role, you can do it. You can maybe knock a little rust off or learning something. It's, every one of us is a newbie at something all the time. I'm always learning new things. Um, Most of all, be kind, be respectful, and help others unlock their potential. That's what you're there for. It can be amazingly rewarding. Okay, so several years ago, I was working for a startup company in Nashville, Tennessee, where I used to live, and there was a group of us who were identified as emerging leaders, and we were sent to a leadership um, program called the Scarlet Leadership Institute. Our group, we called ourselves emerging leaders, but I thought that the word emerging looked more like Ermagerd. So that's what I secretly called our little group. And every 6 weeks, we'd go to this offsite training facility and learn a core leadership skill. We learned things like team dynamics, resolving conflict, communication, and many others. I highly, highly recommend a program like this, something similar, if you can find it. To give you an example, in one of those sessions, we learned about negotiation. We role played and we broke into several pairs of teams, and each team was given, in the form of this legal case document, a summary of their side of the story and some, the desired outcome of the negotiations and some amount of information about the other team that we'd be going up against. Each round of this role playing taught us specific skills and tactics for negotiation. We learned things like the importance of doing research, not only about all the information that you can gather about what you're negotiating for, but who you are negotiating with. The more you know about that other side of the table, the better off you are. Establishing a BATNA, which is your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. This helps you to know when it's a good time to walk away from a deal, when things are not at least as good as what you could do otherwise. Then it's time to wrap it up and move on. And then there's this concept of anchoring a negotiation with terms in your favor. It turns out if whoever makes the first move kind of throws out that first number or that first solution, usually has a big advantage, because the rest of the negotiation is just anchored or centered around that initial offering. All right. So at the end of the day, our instructor cautioned us that the negotiation skills that we had learned were extremely powerful, and to use our new powers for good and not for evil. So about a month later, I found myself in the market for a new vehicle. I did my research. I knew what I wanted. I understood all the options. I knew what to expect from my adversary, one of those sleazy sales guys. And I knew that I could walk away from a deal that was not as good as my BATNA, my best alternative to a negotiated agreement. An opportunity presented itself the day that I got a cavity filled. A used truck showed up on my search at a dealership near my dentist. And after getting that cavity filled, I stopped at the dealership, and it didn't take long for one of those sharks um, to attack. I don't think I'd even fully gotten out of my car before when a salesman was on top of me, and he says, "What brings you in today?" Because that's the way we talk here in Georgia. I said, "I just finished with a dentist appointment, and I stopped here because I'm interested in one of your trucks." He said, "Buddy, research shows that two things people hate the most are going to the dentist and buying a car. You're doing both in the same day. You must be tough." Indeed, I am. When we got to his office, he made the mistake of letting me make the first strike, and I anchored the deal with a number that I was confident, based on my research, was close to their bottom line. And I had a whole lot more firepower from my training at my disposal. After the dust had settled, I owned the exact truck that I wanted, and I knew I could turn around and easily sell that truck for at least $2,000 more than what I had just paid. Walking away, knowing that you got a good deal, that's a great feeling. Negotiation is a leadership skill that you definitely need in your life. And, not just for your workplace, but in the workplace, man, being able to negotiate on behalf of your team, um, or with customers, or whatever the case may be, it comes in handy. That is a extremely valuable skill to have. One of the books our leadership group went through was The Ideal Team Player by Patrick Lencioni. In this book, he describes three virtues that every leader or every great employee must possess. This book can not only help you identify and hire the best employees, but also, as it did with me, got me thinking about, well, how do I measure up with these three virtues? And what are some ways that I could improve in these areas in my own life? The first and most important virtue, arguably, is humility. And the characteristics of healthy humility are, not having an inflated ego, having no concern for status, caring more about your team than about yourself, and eager to share the credit with those that you work with. Humility, though, is is like a spectrum of behavior. At one extreme, you've got someone who is the opposite of humility. Um, People who are characterized as being arrogant and self-centered, and can be like politicians, causing division and resentment among the people that they work with. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you have someone who almost appears to be humble, but can be just as damaging. They discredit their own talents and value to the team, and they won't point out problems when they see them because they feel like maybe their opinion doesn't matter, or they don't have value. Man, when I took a hard look at myself, I I could see that throughout my career, I fell more to this side of the spectrum, where I had a hard time being confident to speak up when I knew something wasn't right, or to take, um, you know, just not feeling like I brought that much value to a team. One of my favorite authors, C.S. Lewis, had this to say about humility, and I'm going to take a sip of a hot beverage. The heart of being humble is unselfish motivation for your team and your customers. When you truly want the best outcome for everyone around you, you will act with humility. The second virtue is hungry, not for food. If that were the case, I would pass this with flying colors. I love me some food. Hungry is a virtue characterized by passion and taking ownership of work. Again, there's a spectrum of behavior. At one extreme, a person's whose life is completely dominated by their work to the detriment of everything and everyone around them. And then at the other end, we see a person with no motivation, no passion, and they are doing the bare minimum to get by. What we need is for ourselves and for the people that we work with to strike that balance of passion and diligence that is manageable and sustainable. And then the third virtue is smart. This is not about intelligence, but common sense regarding people. Characteristics include listening and being engaged and asking good questions, being sensitive about how your words and actions affect other people, and having empathy for your coworkers and customers. To sum up, it's having respect for other people. Now, here's a Venn diagram of all these virtues because there's an unwritten rule that any literature or presentation on leadership has got to include a Venn diagram, right? You it's just got to be there. So humility, passion, diligence, empathy, sensitivity, respect for people, these are all choices that you can strive to make and skills that you can develop. And by doing so, you not only become an indispensable employee, you can inspire others to want those qualities, to want to be more like you. And you become a leader. Did you know that different people have different personalities? It's true. Different people have different behaviors and have different ways of seeing the world, how they process information, how they make decisions, and respond to conflict. Our industry attracts a lot of people with, let's say, suboptimal people skills. We can be productive and get quite far in our careers just on our technical skills alone. Most of us, you know, including myself, are far more comfortable talking to a computer and than navigating the unpredictable emotional waters of human interaction, right? Well, there are many behavior and personality assessments available that can help you gain insight into other people and yourself. My favorite so far is DISC, and DISC stands for a bunch of big words that I don't even remember the names of or what they stand for. But these personality traits can provide insight into behaviors, such as being action oriented or people focused, reserved, task focused. Now, no personality or behavior assessment is 100% accurate. However, using something like DISC can help you and your team understand how each person prefers to receive, process, and communicate information. It's a fantastic tool that can help you to understand people different from yourself. For example, some people are deep thinkers. They don't like surprises. Going into a meeting, announcing some big change, and then immediately expecting to get their input is not how they like to operate. They need time to process new information before they can formulate an opinion and give feedback. Now, you need people who are really active, take charge, gung ho, but you also need people who can think deeply about problems and keep those gung ho folks grounded. Understanding behavior and personalities can go a long way to help you empathize with your coworkers. It can help you influence others because you know how to best communicate with their personality. And a better understanding of your own behavior and personality will help you to develop your own strategies for your workplace. Just being able to articulate to your manager, this is the best way you can communicate with me. That can make a huge difference in the quality of life for everyone. Learning how other people process information, how they communicate, how they respond to conflict, puts you in an amazing position of influence and leadership. What's your greatest weakness? Don't you just love that question? You'll be going along in a job interview and or a performance review, and up pops the question. Well, you knew it was coming because, they probably asked something, what's your greatest strengths, right? And so you've thought through this. You try to come up with something clever like, well, my greatest weakness is I work too hard. I can't help it. I have to get things done on time or it just kills me. It's a curse, I suppose. Well, another powerful tool is the Strengths Finder. This book and the assessment that goes along with it is the result of years of study and tens of thousands of surveys performed by Gallup. Each one of you has unique talents, knowledge, and skills. The Strengths Finder is designed to help you discover your top 5 gifts and help you to maximize those gifts. Because according to Tom Rath and Gallup research, focusing a lot of time and effort on your weaknesses will only lead to mediocrity at best. You're, you're just, they're your weaknesses because you don't care. Or, those are the things that you don't want to do. When you're not able to use your strengths and your top 5 gifts at work, chances are you're going to dread going to work, have more negative interactions, you're going to achieve less and have fewer creative moments. On the flip side, discovering and focusing on your top 5 strengths will have a far, far greater impact. When you're in an environment where you're empowered to use your top 5 strengths, you'll be 100% more engaged. Again, this is an incredible tool that you and your team can use together to unlock your potential, to see how your strengths complement each other. So instead of focusing on weaknesses, hey, let's empower everyone on the team to use their best strengths and how we can complement each other. Let's talk about multitasking. Our culture seems to be fixated on multitasking. We put it in our job descriptions. Must be a good multitasker. We put it on our resumes. Best multitasker ever. The truth is, none of us are good at multitasking, no matter how hard we try to convince ourselves. Our industry talks about maximizing utilization. Every employee, especially in the service industry, or consulting. We need to be 100% utilized. We can't be wasting time. You know, billable hours. Let me ask you, what's a highway at 100% utilization? Right? It's a parking lot. It's not just my opinion, it's math. It's true for traffic, it's true for fluid dynamics, for electricity, and it's true for people. Now, kids love going to a circus. Well, us grown-ups, don't mind it so much either. And it's exciting to see that lion tamer get into the cage with the lion and somehow avoid getting mauled to death. Now, the whip is cool, but the whip does nothing for the lion. The whip is for the audience. We think, well, that's cool. That's Indiana Jones. He's got the whip. But what's up with the chair? Well, lions have incredible powers of focus. That's what helps them to survive as predators in the wild. But when you put the four legs of a chair in a lion's face, the lion can't decide which of those four legs that he needs to focus on. The lion essentially becomes paralyzed with indecision. We are much the same way. When we have too many tasks on our plate, our brains become overloaded. We think we can switch from task to task, but our brains don't work that way. Our brains don't stop thinking about those other problems. Those other problems haunt us even in our sleep. How many times have you woke up with a revelation of like, aha, I know how to fix that? Our subconscious doesn't stop thinking. Now, it may sound counterintuitive, but do everything in your power to limit your work to one thing at a time. I guarantee, I've seen this over and over again. You'll get more work done, you'll do it faster, and it will be at a higher quality than trying to juggle a whole lot of things at once. I got another tip that I want to throw in here about time management and tasks and work, that I hope you can take away with. I want to share with you something that my previous company, a tool that we use to have the best meetings in your life. It's something called Lean Coffee. It was originally created for community meetups to make the most effective and efficient use of everyone's time. This same technique can be applied to a lot of meetings that take place within an organization. So what you need is a bunch of sticky notes, some markers, a Kanban board of some kind, which could be just a whiteboard where you can stick the sticky notes, and you need a timer. You also need a good attitude, but that you need that all the time. So it kind of goes without saying, but I just wanted to make sure you need a good attitude. So when you start a brand new meeting using the Lean Coffee approach, you're going to generate a bunch of ideas and put those on sticky notes. And then you're going to spend a short amount of time doing a really quick pitch of what your sticky note represents, the idea that you want to discuss. Then you're going to spend a little bit of time, each person voting on those sticky notes. And you only get 2 votes. And you can choose to use those votes on 2 different cards, or you can use both votes on a single card. So you just kind of tally mark on those cards. And then finally, you sort those cards by the number of votes. Here's the cool thing. You take the first one with the highest number of votes, you move that into your doing lane, and you set your timer for 5 minutes. You talk about it for 5 minutes. And, maybe along the way, someone is recording some action items that come out of the discussion. When the timer goes off, time's up, and everyone can vote. Thumbs up to stay on the topic for another 5 minutes, or thumbs down to move on to the next topic. And then depending, if you are moving on, you pick the next highest thing in the list and you start talking about that. This is a democratic way of running a meeting. Now, there's usually that one person that just, it's all about them, right? Their problem is the highest priority. And this is where, I'm going to hijack this meeting to talk about me, talk about my problem. Doing a meeting lean coffee style, everyone has a vote. And if you're respectful, at least, then you're not going to have that issue where one person and their pet project is going to hijack the entire meeting. Inevitably, the outcome of these style of meetings is like, wow, I went into this meeting thinking that the highest, the most important thing was XYZ, and we ended up talking about far more important things than what I had envisioned. The outcomes are just amazing when you can run a meeting in this style. Now, we're all working from home and socially distanced. So having a physical board is a little bit tougher, but you can run a physical board and have a camera pointed at it and, having somebody writing down cards, or you can use something virtual like an electronic Kanban system. But you may have to get creative with how you do the voting and using things like comments or task size to tally up votes. You can also run these lean coffee meetings at scale. So if you have a large, company-wide type of thing that you want to run, you can break up into smaller groups. Each group runs their own lean coffee with 6 or 8 people, and then at the end you can ask a representative from each group to share a quick summary of their group's most valuable takeaways and action items. You can take photos of the boards and capture those action items for later follow-up. All right. I submit to you that there are 3 inevitable things in life. There's death, taxes, and PowerPoint. Sooner or later, it's going to happen. Whether it's speaking to your team, your company, a meetup, maybe a conference, maybe a wedding, you're going to have to stand in front of a group of people and present some information. Sometimes complete strangers. In 2011, I finally got up the courage to give my first talk at a user group, at a meetup. Guess what? I stank. I was terrible. But a funny thing happened. I had people thank me for sharing. I had people tell me that I did a good job, even though I was certain I was the very worst speaker in speaker history. It took a while to sink in, but I learned a valuable lesson about the power of community. There are people out there who are really awesome at being human. Those people who will look past your mistakes. They see the good and potential that is in you and encourage you to not give up. Because when you do hard things, like share your experience in front of a audience of strangers or just an audience in general, everyone benefits. And I hope that every day I'm a little more like one of those kind of people. Now, here's one of my favorite quotes. When I gave my first talk, people didn't remember how I fumbled around. I had some terrible demo failure and, you know, did all this kind of crazy stuff. They remember me. They remember that I helped them, even if it's something really small. Um, I helped them to learn something new. In 2016, I had the privilege of giving a keynote at Music City Code, or now it's called Music City Tech. I shared this same story of how I got started. I had more than one person come up to me afterwards and say, I remember when you gave your first talk. I was there. And you're right. You were terrible. Gee, thanks. Now, you may be thinking, I can understand being asked or forced to speak, voluntold to speak, right? Why would I voluntarily get up in front of a group of people and give a talk? Well, let me tell you, having someone not only understand your message, but then be inspired to go and actually do that thing that you're talking about, that is one of the most rare and precious rewards I have ever experienced. Public speaking is an amazing skill that you can learn that will set you apart, open doors and opportunities, and launch you ahead as a leader and influencer in your company and your community. Now, public speaking is just one example. There are lots of ways that you can share your knowledge and experience with others. There are so many ways that you can share. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. And the benefits of joining a community, as I'm sure you're already well aware of, the folks that are kind of the core of your group, is that you can you have a group of people that you can lean on and depend on and you can learn from. It's it's such an amazing gift to be able to have others that you can call upon in your career. Have you ever heard of the Dilbert Principle? The Dilbert Principle is the most ineffective workers are systematically moved to the place where they can do the least amount of damage. Management. Well, it's debatable whether management is the least amount of damage, but you know, at least taking them away from actually writing code could work. Well, early in my career, I worked under a manager who exemplified this Dilbert principle. I really didn't like the man, personally or professionally. His incompetence was legendary. He was notoriously bad. Mistakes were named after him, and yet he still continued to rise in rank and responsibilities. So, names changed to protect the not so innocent. A lot of the work I was required to do under his direction was of no value to anyone. For example, I was asked to create a huge binder of documentation for every method, every stored procedure in the code that we were writing. And no one was going to read this ever. Meaningless and pointless work is soul crushing. I toughed it out for more than a year. I tried to find ways to get out from under him, but with no relief in sight, I found another job. I said to myself, life is too short to work somewhere that stinks. I started living by this philosophy. I offered it as advice to other people when I heard them complaining about their jobs. You see, in technology, we are very privileged that we are in such high demand. We have the luxury of being able to choose where we work. That isn't the case in every profession. The problem is, this idea began to pollute my perspective. When things started to go sour, I would think, oh, great, here we go again. Time to start looking for another job. Years later, I was in a similar situation. I was unhappy. I started interviewing at other companies, and there was an attractive job offer on the table, and I was trying to decide if I should accept it. And that's when my wife asked me two questions that stopped me in my tracks. Have you done everything that you can do? And if you left now, would you have any regrets? Whew. Man, that's tough. I declined the job offer. I took ownership of the situation. I committed to doing everything I could to make my team successful. In the end, I left that job 1 year later, almost to the very day, but I left having no regrets. And I was so proud of the work that we had accomplished. It had been one of the most productive and prolific years in my career. Now, sure, there can be toxic environments, there can be career limiting situations, and there are amazing opportunities that come along that may justify you changing a job. But for everything else, I have a new mindset. Life is too short to let things stay the way they are. Now, you've probably heard the phrase, that's not my job. I've learned that taking ownership and responsibility is always the right thing to do. And it has far reaching effects. I've learned that it's okay to be honest with your management. Ask yourself, ask your management, what can I do? Is there anything I can do to help? It's always the right thing. It's always the right time to do the right thing. And in doing so, you become a leader in the eyes of those around you. Every now and again, we have to say goodbye to some good people, sometimes really good ones. And regardless of the circumstances, we let them know how much we're going to miss them. Sometimes we even throw a party and tell stories about awesome things that they'll be remembered for. One day, it struck me. We were saying goodbye to some really awesome people. It was more than one person, and we were having this kind of going away party and celebration. And I thought, why can't we express our appreciation all the time? Why do we have to wait until someone is leaving before we let them know what kind of impact they've made and how awesome they are. Maybe if we had told them how much they were valued, they wouldn't be leaving. Maybe. So I decided to run an experiment. Every Friday, I would write a short tribute to someone at work describing what impact that person had made on me personally. A story about when we first met or something awesome that they had done that I was impressed with. Here's an example. Nakota was at that time my company's customer support manager. As someone described, he did the work of 10,000 men. Nakota consistently went above and beyond to make customers happy. He he is awesome. Now, the drawing isn't important. That's just something fun that I like to do. What I said about each person usually wasn't all that earth-shattering either. The real magic, now get this, the real magic was what everyone else said throughout the day. Story after story, encouragement, high fives. It was beautiful. All I did was simply start the conversation. This experiment lasted for about a year, and I had so many people thank me and tell me how special it was to be honored and recognized and celebrated by their peers. I had so many people thank me for honoring folks that they, you know, thought were awesome. You see, every one of us wants to know that the things we do matter, that our work has value and significance, that we have value. Encouragement highlights that person's strengths. It's positive reinforcement. What does that person now want to do? Well, they want to go do more of those awesome things that they were recognized for. They want to keep feeling that feeling of making a difference. In reflecting over more than 10 years of agile and lean practice, I've come to the conclusion that respect for people is the most fundamental principle. Respect requires a company to remain true to the goal of a sustainable workplace where its employees can thrive. It requires listening and empathy, mutual respect. It brings people together. Having respect for one another makes you want to fight for each other's success. Respect seeks to promote healthy work, well being, commitment, and to reduce friction and wasteful activities. Anything that's having a negative impact on your work. If you really care, and if you care about other people, you're going to fix those problems. Respect is that fundamental thing that enables you to be successful at all those other things. If you know me or know my reputation, I can't go for very long without talking about bacon. So I submit to you, here is my highest award for excellence. When you encourage someone or a team of people, they will continue to improve and create amazing results. And the cool thing is, they can go on to inspire others to do the same and inspire more to do more. It's a it's a cycle. Now, to be transparent, I grew up in a dysfunctional family. There wasn't a whole lot of encouragement being shared. So, encouragement doesn't come natural to me. This is yet another skill that I've had to learn. It's something that you can learn too. So, let me show you. Imagine you have a coworker named Mary. Mary, I want you to know how much I appreciate all the database work you do for our team. Not only that, but you are always smiling and cheerful. You are such an encouragement to me and everyone around you. Thank you for being awesome. Paul, thank you for always being willing to help. I know I can count on you to help me when I'm stuck. It means a lot to me. You're awesome. Mark, thank you for always wearing deodorant and coming to work fully dressed. Keep it up, buddy. You're awesome. See, it's not that hard. If there's someone that you know who has impacted you in some way, recently or even in the past, let them know about it. Don't wait until it's too late. Now, don't you wish sometimes you could just fast forward to the day when you have it all together, you have everything mastered? Well, the reality is there's no shortcut to success. We get out of life in proportion to what we put into it. And I'm telling you all these things about leadership and teams and how people work together. And not so that you can go back to your workplace and point your finger at your leaders and, you know, point out all the things that they're doing wrong and talk bad about them behind their backs and say things like, well, if I was in charge, things would be different around here. No, I'm telling you these things so that you can take an honest look at yourself and start asking some important questions. Questions like, what changes can I make to become the most valuable employee my company has ever seen? What changes can I help my team make to become the most valuable team and productive team that my company has ever seen? If your actions inspire others to dream more, to learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. So said President Mutton Chops. None of those things require you to be a manager or to have a fancy title. I have one more story that I want to share with you. Thanksgiving 1982. As was custom in my mom's side of the family, we would gather together at my aunt's house. We would, me and my brothers and my sister, we'd pile in the car. I'm the youngest of four children. And we'd get in the car and we'd drive 2 hours away to my aunt and uncle's house. And family would come in from all over. And it was, like a huge family reunion. Well, this fateful Thanksgiving, 1982, I discovered one of these in my cousin's house. I don't know if I spent the entire time sitting at this keyboard and playing around with this magical device, but it made an impression on me, and I made an impression on my uncle. Sometime after Thanksgiving, my mom gets a call, and we get back in the car and we drive 2 hours away to my aunt and uncle's house. And there waiting for me is a big cardboard box. And inside was the TRS 80, a cassette drive, a floppy drive, a dot matrix printer, cables, ribbon cables, and this book. This one kind and very generous act launched me on a journey of computers, programming, and a love for technology. Even the illustrations in this silly book made an impact on me. I continue to be inspired by my aunt and uncle's example of investing not only in their family, but in the lives of countless others. I literally cannot thank them enough for the impact that they've made in my life, my career, and my livelihood. I want to tell you that you have an amazing opportunity to impact your family, your relatives, and your community. You never know if some act of kindness, a word of encouragement, a small investment of your time could be that catalyst that launches someone else on their lifelong journey of exploration, joy, and maybe even their livelihood. So, this is my challenge to you. Regardless of the technology that you know, regardless of your age, your years of experience, your lack of experience, regardless of your job title, you have amazing potential to impact your workplace, your family, your community, and beyond in positive, significant, and meaningful ways. Go maximize your talents. Go take on ownership and responsibility. Be courageous. Go and inspire others. Go and be awesome. Thank you.
Oh, David, that was incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that presentation with us today. I'll say I'm grateful personally for your uncle setting in motion the journey that brought you here to give us this presentation, because it was really incredible. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All of you in the audience, also thank you for joining us today. I hope that you'll also join us for next month's meeting, for our September meeting. Jeff Blankenberg will be presenting Understanding Alexa. He'll start by teaching us a little bit about why voice assistants are cool, and how then move right into how to program them. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that link in the chat, so you can check out that meetup. And then also, please join us on Zoom immediately after the presentation, essentially right now. And I'll drop that link in the chat as well. Actually, David, is there anything else you'd like to say? Should we follow you anywhere in particular to get more great information and leadership advice?
Well, on my final slide, I've got a link here to my website and my Twitter. I am most active on Twitter. So if you happen to be on Twitter, please follow me, and you can see my silly shenanigans on Twitter. And you can ask me questions anytime. My direct messages are open. So I'm Reverend Geek everywhere, Instagram, Twitch, YouTube. I've been doing a lot more streaming with some of the drawings and illustrations that I do. That's a passion of mine now. So yeah, follow me, and maybe I'll kick out a nugget every now and again.
I will say, I follow you, David, and it is always encouraging and inspiring. Definitely have picked up a lot of cool stuff from your posts. So
thank you.
With that, just wanted to say thank you everyone again for joining us this week and look forward to seeing you on Zoom in just a moment.